For the last 100 years or so, the world pretty much ran on oil. But in the 21st century, a totally new resource dictates everything, from geopolitics to the global economy. And that resource is silicon. The fight to control it? Well, that's shaping up to be the single most important story for India's future. Let's get into why.
Just think about it for a second. That phone in your pocket, the laptop you might be watching this on, the internet, your car, even the entire foundation of artificial intelligence, all of it is powered by these tiny, incredibly complex little things called semiconductor chips. They're totally invisible to us day to day, but without them, our modern world would literally grind to a halt.
And that right there, that's the key. These chips are, and this is no exaggeration, the lifeblood of our digital civilization. And just like we had the oil wars in the 20th century, a new global struggle is heating up over who gets to control this absolutely essential resource.
And this brings us to what we call the global chip war. It's a super high-stakes battle, but it's not a war fought with tanks and soldiers. No, this one's fought with things like export controls, huge factory investments, and a non-stop race for technological dominance. And the two main players? The United States and China.
So, to really get a grip on this war, you first have to understand the battlefield. And that battlefield is this incredibly complex global supply chain. Honestly, the best way to think about it is like a massive, worldwide project with three very different, super specialized teams.
All right, so first up, you've got the architects. These are mostly US companies like NVIDIA and Intel. They design the super complex blueprints and own the intellectual property. Then they send those blueprints over to the master builders. These are primarily companies like TSMC in Taiwan and Samsung in South Korea. They possess the almost magical tech to actually build these microscopic marvels. And finally, you have the toolmakers, like the Dutch company ASML, who build the ridiculously complex machines that the builders need to do their job.
Okay, but here's where it gets really crazy. This whole supply chain, it is not balanced at all. Look at this. A single company, TSMC, in one place, Taiwan, makes a whopping 90% of the world's most advanced chips. Let that sink in. That single fact is pretty much ground zero for the entire chip war.
All right, so with that massive dependency in mind, how are the two big players, the US and China, approaching this? Well, their strategies couldn't be more different, but they are both incredibly aggressive.
This slide lays it out perfectly. The US is running what's called a yard and fence strategy. It's trying to grow its own yard by pouring billions of dollars into building chip factories on American soil. And at the same time, it's putting up a high-tech fence using export controls to block China from getting advanced chips or the tools to make them. China's response? They're building a Great Wall of Silicon, a massive national push, spending hundreds of billions to master every single part of the process and become totally self-sufficient.
Now, for a long, long time, all of this drama was unfolding while India was, well, mostly on the sidelines. A powerhouse in software, for sure, but not really a player in the hardware game. But that is changing, and changing fast. India is now making a very bold move to enter this global fight.
This timeline really tells the story. For decades, India was completely dependent on other countries for chips. Then, 2020 happened. The pandemic hit, the global chip shortage kicked in, and it was a massive wake-up call. It showed just how vulnerable the country was. And that crisis? That's what sparked the launch of the ambitious India Semiconductor Mission back in 2022.
And you know what? The timing for India was just perfect. As this rivalry between the US and China gets more intense, the rest of the world started desperately looking for what they call a China plus one strategy. Basically a stable, reliable backup to China for manufacturing. This opened up a huge geopolitical window for India to step right in.
And this wasn't just talk. India is putting serious money on the table. The government has committed a massive $10 billion incentive package to back the India Semiconductor Mission. This isn't just a press release. It's a huge financial commitment aimed at luring the biggest names in the business and building a whole new industry right from scratch.
Okay, so why all this effort? Why pour billions into an industry that's notoriously difficult to get into? Well, because what's at stake for India is so much bigger than just silicon wafers.
It really boils down to three huge prizes. First, there's strategic autonomy. This is about securing the nation's most critical sectors, like defense, space, and 5G. Second, economic resilience. This means moving up from just assembling phones to actually making their most valuable parts, which creates better jobs and grows the economy. And finally, it's about getting a seat at the global high table, cementing India's place as a real tech power.
And that first one, strategic autonomy, really is the heart of it all. This quote says it best. It's about having the freedom to do what's best for your country without constantly worrying that someone could just flip a switch and cut off your access to critical technology. That is the real grand prize here.
But let's be real, this road is anything but easy. The challenges are enormous. A single one of these advanced chip factories, or fabs, can cost more than $20 billion. They need an insane amount of super pure water and a power grid that never, ever fails. Those are huge hurdles for India. And maybe the biggest challenge of all? You need a huge pool of highly specialized experts, which, right now, just doesn't exist at the scale India needs.
So when you put it all together, it comes down to this. We're watching a true turning point in history. This isn't just another government project. The success or failure of India's semiconductor dream will quite literally define its economic and geopolitical story for decades, maybe even for the next century.
And that leaves us with one final, crucial question. The plan is there, the global situation is ripe with opportunity, and the path forward is literally paved with silicon. But is the national will, from the government to the industry, all the way down to the people, is it strong enough to conquer these massive challenges and finally master this technology? That's the story we all need to be watching in 2025 and well beyond.